It is Sunday, March 23rd, 2025, as Skaz and I come to you live. We're live, pal. First things first, Skaz, because we're going to talk about the Celtics, their ownership situation, what it means going forward. We're going to go through the Dan Shaughnessy story, the Axis story, what it means to the team. We'll give our opinions on everything that's going on. But because I am fair, and because unlike Bill Simmons, I can admit when I'm wrong. Good morning, everybody. Uh, I was wrong on Thursday when I said I will go to my grave saying that Pags had the highest bidder. The reporting has come out otherwise. I will say this in my defense. I think Pags might have had the actual highest cash bidding. And maybe that's where the mistake was. I haven't circled back. I'm just telling you I was wrong on the bidding. Shaughnessy's story said that Pags wasn't the high bidder. The Axios story said that Pags was the third highest bidder. So I will take their reporting at their word that they had the highest bid. But my detail, my little asterisk, as they say, is that Pags might have had the highest cash bid. And maybe that's where the error of my way is. But Skaz, I was wrong. I was wrong.
Jay Stu, the sale isn't finalized yet, is all I would say. There's still it still has to go to the vote. I believe that happens this summer, and I think
June.
you're kind of onto something with the Pags thing because that Axios report says he had the third highest bid, but it was fully funded, and I do think that's something that may come up as this sale continues to be waded through.
I did have somebody reach out to me because I circled back to it and say, and I tweeted this on Thursday, I think it was. Let's wait and see. Let's wait until the dust settles and see where we're at. So I don't think this is over yet, and it may be, but they need the new ownership group needs 23 of 30 current governors to approve the transfer. That vote, I believe, is in June. So there is a chance that this thing could fall apart. I know that the Timberwolves sale was multi-layered and had some issues, and they had to go to an arbitration panel because Glenn Taylor kind of wanted to sell, and then he didn't want to sell, and then somebody missed a payment, or they had an extension on a payment, and the A-Rod group essentially got slowed down from acquiring the team because Glenn Taylor did want to sell, he didn't want to sell. It's a mess. So maybe this is going to be a little bit messy. But let's start from like the last few seasons as far as NBA teams being sold. The Suns in 2023 sold for $4 billion. The Mavericks sold for $3.5 billion. The Wolves and the Hornets sold for $3 billion. And the Celtics are going to sell for at least $6.1 billion, but it could be as high as $7.3 billion, which is insane, an insane amount of money. And so let's kind of start with there. 6.1 billion, it's the highest an NBA sports franchise has ever sold for. If it's 7.3, that's even stupider, right? Like, what are we doing with our money? We're buying sports franchises, but good for the Celtics, good for the NBA. And what does this mean for expansion? The starting bid to get in an expansion team is now $6 billion. And that's not great for Vegas. That's not great for Seattle unless something else gets worked out. But Skaz, when you heard about the sale, when you heard about the number, what were your reactions?
Yeah, I'm with you. I was very surprised at the number because, we were told during this process that it wasn't, you weren't getting the entire Boston Celtics. You were getting a majority share of the Boston Celtics, whatever that number is. And so to see the number come in at, 6 point, whatever, it end up being now, and they're saying reports it could get over 7 in a couple of years. I was definitely surprised by the number. Uh, you know, I know we're going to get into the Chisholm thing, and Middleman was allegedly the second bid and Pags was third. But just initial reactions on the number, I was very surprised that it was that high. And did the timing surprise you at all that it was this week?
It was out of nowhere. It was legitimately out of nowhere. Um, and so that part of it surprised me. The fact that Pags didn't get it surprised me. Those were the two. Those were the two biggest factors, in my opinion, that kind of blew me away. The number that it went to, and that it wasn't Pags. The timing would have been third, because, as Bill Simmons said, this thing should have been wrapped up in November, or was going to be wrapped up in November. And here we are in March, and we had Chris Mannix on Felger and Maz, and he's like, yeah, and I'm paraphrasing, but he's like, yeah, Pags is probably going to get it, but this thing might take months to figure out. And then boom, the next day it happens. We wake up to it, essentially. Some of us who sleep till 10 in the morning, I do not. But we get the news in the AM hours of Thursday, which is great because now we have something to talk about for Thursday's show, because we have a talk show to do today or that day or whatever it is. But those were the three things that surprised me. And we know nothing about this guy other than he's a huge Celtics fan who grew up here, has a house on Nantucket, and is going to buy a house in Boston. Those things should not matter. The fact that he's a fan is great, but how is he going to allocate his funds? Is he going to be a fan first, or is he going to be a businessman who happens to own a team that he's a fan of? That's the question. That's the biggest question, is does he believe in investing more money to make money, or is he going to be one of these people who cuts corners because he's a business person first who happens to own an NBA sports team? And that's the questions that we don't know the answers to. But his history, as Matt McCarthy detailed Thursday night, Friday, whatever night it was,
Thursday,
is that
I believe. Yeah.
he comes in, this guy Chisholm and his group comes in, cuts the fat out of the organization and runs a business. So he can be a fan and he can sit front row, but like if he's running it like a business, that means that, and this is something I want to talk about, is like fake NBA trades, right? And where the Celtics go from there. But you have to wonder if he's going to cut out the quote unquote fat of the organization so that it can be a business revenue generator for him, because he's a business person first and a fan second. Or is he a fan first and he's okay with taking financial losses? We don't know that answer yet.
Yeah, and I do think that's, one of the more interesting parts. Obviously, when a deal like this goes down, there's a million interesting parts, but the fan aspect of it, I think, you can look at it a number of different ways where you have the Steve Cohen type owners, the fan type owners, but Steve Cohen is not a normal owner. Steve Cohen is one of the richest people in the world. And I know when we're talking about billionaires, you assume they're all kind of created equal. They are not, especially when it comes to sports ownership. Steve Cohen has tens and tens and tens of billions of dollars. He treats the Mets like his toy, like his vacation. Basically, it's his vacation house. It's where him and his friends and family go to have fun, to do whatever they want, and he has unlimited funds when it comes to the Mets. Then there's the other fan owner aspect, and I think this is something Robert Kraft has kind of found himself in that mold of, where the Patriots have become his net worth. The Patriots are his portfolio in a lot of ways, and that's not uncommon for some owners. But the difference between a fan owner like Kraft and Cohen is the pocketbook, is the money, is how much they have in the bank. All reports looking into Chisholm, his net worth is right around what the number is for the Celtics, or at least in that range. And I think that's a scary thing, if you're a Celtics fan, because your ideal owner is using the franchise, and it sounds crazy to say, but almost as a toy. Like it's not their livelihood; it's their passion project. Is what you're hoping for. With Chisholm, he's making this his entire brand, basically. And we'll get into the finances more, but there's reporting that he's not even the most, the one financially backing this. That he has people in this sixth stream, or sixth team, or sixth street, whatever it is. They are actually going to be putting up more money than Chisholm in this deal, and there's reports that might not even be allowed by the NBA, and that he might have to get a waiver for that process to go through. So this is a big process that is just starting to develop.
This is a fluid situation, guys. And that's why, like, I think the person who reached out to me about, like, hey, wait until the dust settles, might mean, and it goes back to Pags might have had the actually most financially stable offer if it's all cash, right? It's all cash for the team and they can go forward, because Wick had said this in an interview, maybe within the last year for sure, is that there has never been a cash call from the ownership group. Like, they've never been short on payroll. They've never had any financial issues. And so that's something you don't want a Frank McCourt Dodger situation where Frank McCourt can't make payroll for a sports franchise that he owns, and Magic Johnson ends up owning the property down by the seaport because of it, right? So you don't want a situation like that. Let's go through some of the dirty details of this. Shaughnessy was the first story I saw about this. He reached out to Irv Grousbeck, and essentially his reporting is that Chisholm was the highest bidder. He was bidding higher than Paliuka. Irv said that Chisholm checked all the boxes, deferred everything else to Wick. So Shaughnessy, being a good reporter, and I know you people hate Shaughnessy, but he reached out to Wick. And to Wick's credit, he responded to Shaughnessy. And he said to Shaughnessy via text message, quote, "Steve has always been a good friend and partner. We have done great stuff together. The professional advisors my family brought in to run the very serious process recommended to the family that one bid stood apart from the rest. When all the final bids were in, I have texted warmly back and forth with Steve today, and he wrote he will support us doing the deal that was chosen. He has been a fantastic friend and partner, actually. We will always be friends." I would like to see the screenshot of those text messages. That's my, not from Shaughnessy to Wick, but from Wick to Pags. I would like to actually see those text messages, and maybe I can get a Freedom of Information Act for that, unless they've already been swiped away. But I have not gotten the vibe that Wick and Pags have been on the same wavelength for a while, realistically. Wick's a good owner. I want to emphasize that point. Wick has been a good face of the franchise owner. But there's a business sense that has seemingly come out within the last few years that Wick was representing the family, but he was acting like it was his team. And I have an issue with people who manipulate details like that. Like, do you own the team or not? Well, the family owns the team. Okay, so you're speaking for the family, but that's not you. Like, it's a gray area, but I feel manipulated a little bit. And I know that there are other Celtics fans who feel manipulated too. Like, I haven't been in the building since the Memphis game. But when that sale first happened, I went to opening night and I was talking to fans about the whole situation. And they're like, yeah, we kind of feel like we're done dirty. And it's a small sample size. It's not like, what are these like, oh, I pulled the whole building. It was like a handful of season ticket holders who were friends and some chats. And so it's a sample size of maybe like 20 to 30 people. But they feel kind of like Wick manipulated them. And I feel that way. And again, Wick has been a good front face. He's been open to doing conversation with the Felger and Maz show. I've had a good relationship with him for a while, but there was something amiss there. And that's kind of how I feel.
And we're probably going to get into it, but I think the wording there is really interesting. When you talk about Wick's messaging to Shaughnessy, he says Pags was happy to go with the advisement that we were given, basically, to take the offer we were advised to take. Well, the advisement team, and I'm sorry if I'm stepping on your toes at all here, Jay Stu.
No, by all means.
The advisement team, we learned from that Axios report, the co-CEO of the advisement firm that Wick and his family used to go over the sale, their co-CEO played college soccer with Bill Chisholm. So if I'm Pags and I see that and I'm getting the text, well, we're going with what the advisement firm told us to do, I'd be like, oh, the advisement firm that the new owner's college soccer buddy was on, that would definitely raise some eyebrows for me, at least.
So there's this other detail here, Skaz. And I don't know, I'm not a business person. I'm barely a sports radio producer, quite frankly. I'm barely able to communicate at all. But what I would tell you is the Federal Trade Commission, there's probably some federally governed insider trading thing. So, like, stipulations to the sale, like, was it navigated towards somebody else because of friend of a friend of a friend or direct friends? Like, I don't know how all those details work. So it's got to be like clear as day that these were the terms of the sale and these things met because otherwise there's got to be some insider trading. But I'm not a business person. I don't know. I don't understand it. But it smelled fishy as we learn more, fishy Joe Murray, as more and more of these details come out. And maybe this is what business is now, is that you're just I almost used a really bad term there. You're just hanging out with your friends, and you're just trading baseball cards with your friends. You're trading sports teams with your friends. You're selling sports teams to your friends. Like, I don't know how to tie that loose end in together and make the analogy that everybody would understand.
No, I get it. And can I just, on the Wick thing,
Yes,
can I just kind of ask you a question and
sure.
kind of explain? So, Wick staying, as the new, he's going to stay for 3 years or whatever. I think that was a Wick stipulation and
Yep.
something that he really wanted in the new ownership group. Now, as a Celtics fan, should you feel good that the guy who it was the face of the team when they were blindly spending, even though it wasn't his money, is still there? Or should you feel, bad because the new ownership group knows exactly who Wick is, and he's basically just going to be, their talking head, and they're going to do whatever they want regardless. So basically, what I'm saying is, from the outside, you'd say, well, the guy that was signing all the blank checks and was, keeping everyone and doing whatever is still there. All the guy that gave out all those crazy contracts is still there. Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
I think right now it's in question to whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. And look, that's based on my small sample size of people and how they feel about Wick right now. I think Wick has been a good face of the franchise owner, but like, how involved was he? How many suggestions were his ideas? And we may find out through some reporting, like the influence that Pags had that might have been stronger than Wick, that Wick took all this credit for. Like, sometimes the loudest person in the room is the most insecure person in the room, right? Like, you get the guy who's quiet in the corner and he just kind of watches and lets things happen. That might be the smartest guy in the room. That might be the richest guy in the room. You don't know. But the guy who's loud and boisterous, maybe sometimes you question that. So I would say right now that's a to be determined answer. I have a podcast to have an opinion on today. I think Wick being the face of a franchise is comforting to more people than we think it is.
So, I guess my question is, and I don't, it's
Is that
not
an
fair.
acceptable answer, Skaz?
It absolutely is, because how could any of us really know right now? But you know, if middleman or so, if Pags won the bid, is Wick still in that spot?
No, I think he's out.
Completely out.
That's what I think is. I think Wick is completely out.
So then I don't want to hear the Wick. Me and Pags have a great relationship, and we're continue to be friends, and all this stuff. Like, something else is going on there. Something like, I don't know. When there's smoke, there's fire, kind of thing. It seems like, and I know Pags put out a statement, and to your point too, Jay Stu,
Corporate angry is how I would describe Pags. Corporate angry.
I'm not sure this thing is over. I'm not. Reading about Chisholm and his net worth and the funding from Sixth Street and all this, I think this guy might need Pags.
So it's interesting that you say that, and maybe that's how Pags gets in. Is that he has the actual cash to get the number 2 spot in ownership. Like, Chisholm's 1, Pags is 2, and maybe it's a negotiation tactic. Like, okay, you need cash. I have the cash, but Wick's out. And that's the compromise, is that Wick's out. Wick is out in however many years it is. Or maybe there's some, like, okay, Wick can stay on as a partner, but he's at 1%, like literally 1%, and he's no longer courtside at games or whatever it is. Like, there's, and by the way, Wick isn't at every game. I can tell you who is at every game amongst the leadership group. And I know where they are, and they're not all always necessarily courtside. But I can tell you, like, Pags is at more games than Wick. And for whatever reason, whether Wick's, at a place that isn't near the stadium. I know I see Pags at every game. There's a rarity where I look over at Pags at where Pags is sitting and he's not there. Like that's rare when he's not there, or he's not somewhere. He might be hosting a client in a suite. He might be at the courtside club. Like Pags is in that building for every single game. I can't tell you that I've seen Wick at every single game.
Yeah, that's the fascinating. I mean, of all the things, this deal is going to have a million moving parts, and it's all very fascinating. But the Pags Wick angle, certainly for me, is one of the more fascinating. And if you're a Celtics fan,
I
reading
wish Skaz, I'm sorry, Skaz,
no,
but
no,
I wish
please.
Pags would go on the record beyond the statement.
That's almost exactly what I was just about to say, because we see Wick and Chisholm already doing their media tour. Wick's done a little backpedaling already, which I think is slightly concerning for Celtics fans. And I know Pags is a professional. He's a businessman. He doesn't want to come across as sour or burn bridges. But if this thing, the funding, and just for some clarity, because I kind of was a little all over the place with the Sixth Street stuff earlier. So we mentioned the Axios report
Yep,
multiple times. Dan Premack is the business editor at Axios.
great
He
story.
he tweeted this after the article was published, I believe. He said, "Fun fact about the Celtics sale that I didn't have earlier. Sixth Street is currently expected to put more actual money into the deal than Bill Chisholm. That said, a bunch of insider folks are telling me that's not allowed. So this is either a disagreement on the rules, or Chisholm thinks he can possibly get a waiver from the league. Either way, the structure of this deal is very, very complex." So that tells me a lot of words to basically say, hold on. Like, this guy might not have the money to buy the Celtics.
So this leads to why this came out of nowhere, is because they're trying to get a jump on it and get public favor and be like, we've got this deal in place. Like, let's move it forward. Because it's also interesting, Skaz. This came from the Globe. It came from a local outlet. It didn't come from Shams. It didn't come from a national guy. It came from a local report.
Wick.
A local reporter broke the news, and it was the Globe, and it was Himmelsbach, who usually gets all the Celtics news.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah,
So
I
I
think it
don't
was
know if
Wick.
it's Wick. I don't know if it's Pags. But it's a local thing, and they reached out to the Globe because they have Himmelsbach in their back pocket, right?
And
Like he's the guy who breaks stories for the Celtics.
yeah, no, I don't blame him at all. I think Himmelsbach is tremendous. I
Yep,
just think this was, if we're I think it was Wick. If we're speculating, I'm
wouldn't
purely
surprise me.
speculating. But if anyone wanted to get this story out there, that would make the most sense to me.
Yep. So to go to the Axios story, right? You mentioned Chisholm, and there's a question, and I love this story because it's cut and dry. Everybody can understand it, right? It's not some business elitist talking in terms you've never heard of, not letting you, the actual person, understand what's going on. It's a different vernacular in the business world. There's a big word for you. That's your word of the day, vernacular. Um, it's talk speak. It's like barroom talk. So one of the things was Chisholm the highest bidder? Yes, and he agreed to allow Stellar Wick to remain as team CEO and NBA governor until the final close in 2028. Does Chisholm have all the money? No, his bid is not fully financed, and this is where it might get sticky. This is before the tweets that you just mentioned, particularly since the other bidders, existing owner and Bain Capital executive Steve Pagliuca, did submit a fully financed bid, a bit at a lower price and without Wick remaining as CEO. Those are interesting details. But it's what's the lower price? Is it 6 billion? Is it 6.1 and the Chisholm bid is 7.3, quote unquote? Um, and then you have the Phillies guy had a higher bid. Steve Middleman, funny name for a CEO to be Middleman. Um, Middleman had the higher bid than Pags, uh, but it's unclear if that one was fully financed. So Pags had a fully financed bid, but it was third. now you've got something, right? And if Middleman has moved on already, because there was one of the other bidders was looking into something else. I think it was the fourth place bidder. His name doesn't matter. But Chisholm still has time. Since back to the story, Chisholm still has time since the NBA won't approve a deal until June, which, as I mentioned, they need 23 of 30 governors to approve it. Almost everyone has seen this opportunity, most at a lower price. So his best chance is to pull some folks from the other three bidding groups. So this is where does Pags buy into the Chisholm group because he has the cash and he needs cash, and it would make sense because Pags is a current owner who's staying on. Robert Hale is a current owner who's staying on. So you put Pags in there who's got real money, and then the sale of the team actually goes up. But then it goes to the Pags Wick relationship, and whether Pags wants Wick there and to Wick be the face of the franchise still, the ownership face of the franchise, and so on and so on and so on.
And I think the Robert Hale thing is, interesting as well. You look at it, and Robert Hale's not a name that gets brought up with Wick or with Pags, but he's another guy that's been around forever. He's one of the Celtics minority owners. So you say, well, why is Robert Hale sticking around, but Pags with more money and probably a bigger stake isn't? Robert Hale is the founder, I believe, or CEO of Granite Telecommunications, I believe is the company. Bill Chisholm works for Symphony Technology Group. I would just say that, there is a possibility that they are friendly, that they know each other. I just think it's another wrinkle where why is Robert Hale sticking around and, Pags is the one that's out. That's why the Pags Wick, great friends. We've been, doing this forever. We're a team. I don't seem like too much of a team right now.
No. And Robert Hale was added to the ownership group according to the Celtics' own website. It was February 2nd of 2012.
So he's been here a while.
02 Granite Communications is the industry leader with a football footprint that covers 94% of North America. Revenues exceeding $650 million, 900 teammates, and servicing 86 of the Fortune 100 companies. Mr. Hale has been recognized as a leading entrepreneur by several organizations, publications, including he owns Fox Rock Properties, a Boston-based commercial real estate firm with over 1 million square feet of space. Let me read that again. He owns Fox Rocks Properties, a Boston-based commercial real estate firm with over 1 million square feet of space.
Might be a good guy to keep around, I guess, if you're looking to build something in the Boston area.
Like a new stadium.
Which I know they've already pushed back on, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I believe anything.
Well, so what if Skaz?
Here we go.
And this was a Reddit theory. Was when Bezos was going to buy the Celtics back in November. What if Chisholm's first move is to buy the Celtics, then he buys the Bruins, which then he buys the TD Garden. And by the way, I don't think the Bruins are looking to sell, but I do know. This is the J. Stu phone. I do know that over the summer, the Bruins and the Celtics were in a massive fight over the economics of the building.
Yeah, I think,
and the Celtics outdraw the Bruins by a lot of money in that building.
I'm sure this year even more so with what the Bruins are putting on the ice. But the only thing I would say to that, and I love the theory, and I know that was definitely a Bezos rumor, as you said. I don't think Bill Chisholm can afford it.
So there's that.
He can't. He can bear. I don't even think he can afford the Celtics. He can't on his own.
But Pags can.
So Pags buys the Bruins, and then he has building leverage over the Celtics and Wick. That's how he gets his revenge. He buys the Bruins, and then he owns the building. So maybe that's how they figured. I don't know.
That's a theory, Skaz. I will put that theory into the ether because that's how Robert Kraft got the Patriots. He had the land, and he had a lease.
Location.
Right? And if you're a sports team owner, right? Do you want two two arenas in the same city. Like, and there's probably like leasing permits where you can't have another stadium within a certain mile radius or whatever it is. But like, they were talking about building a new soccer stadium in Everett for a while.
Yeah, 20 years it feels like.
But the point is if the Celtics leave the TD Garden, right? They leave that land. Where do they go? Right? Are they going to build one in Framingham? Or are they going to build one in Raynham? Are they going to build one up at the Brook? Shout out Nine Dragons, where the casino is now. Are they going to build one in Everett? Can they build one in? Are they going to buy the Kowloon? And there we go, shouting out all my
There
good
you
friends.
go.
Right? Are they going to buy the land by the Kowloon and put the new TD Garden, the basketball arena, on Route 1? Like, you got to find a place for it. So they have a spot for it. Does Pags buy the building, buy the Bruins, and now you have some sort of merger, and Pags gets all the concessions, right? And this is just all hypothetical.
Yeah, and I knew this was a topic of discussion, so I looked into it. The Bruins are worth, for an NHL team, they're worth, a little over $1 billion, or maybe even a little more than that, but right around there. TD Garden, though, has its own value of around 350 to 400 million, I believe. So Chisholm, this guy's, begging 6th Street for money to buy the Celtics. I don't see him doing that, but I do wonder, if the Garden, something is going to happen between the two teams, because the Celtics they're in a bad spot when it comes to the TD Garden. And I know fans don't like to hear that, but owners, especially new owners, don't want to lose money on the building they're in. They don't want to pay rent. They don't want to lose gate. And the Celtics are doing both of those things right now, and they're a significantly better team than the one they're paying rent to.
Also, keep this in mind too, is that Pags tried to buy the NHL for $4 billion in 04, 05, 06 at some point around there. So this is 04, 05, 06, and he's offering $4 billion for a league.
Yeah.
So we're not holding bake sales for Pags.
No, certainly not.
Right. So anything else on the ownership stuff, Skaz?
I would just, recommend our listeners maybe look into the published works of Bill Chisholm's wife if you're looking for some weekend reading.
Okay.
She's a published author with some very interesting books.
Are they business books? Are they
what
kind of books are they?
Kimberly Ford Chisholm is her name, Jay Stu, if you would like to look her up. Her most famous published work is titled Hump. Yes, I'm sorry for that, Jay Stu. Yes, it is a book about having sex post kids, and the book is dedicated to Bill Chisholm. And we went over the chapters a little bit on Friday night. But yes, if any of our listeners want to get some more information on the life and home life of the Celtics' new owner, his wife is a published author who has written some very detailed books about her personal life. So yes, it's we have some readers, some people in our YouTube chat have already reached out to me and Joe, said they bought the book. I believe it's arriving today on Amazon, and they're going to report back to us. So, yes.
Does this mean, Skaz, that we get readings from Joe Murray?
Oh, I mean, it's certainly possible. It is certainly possible that he could, maybe do a little audio book for the new Celtics owner.
I'm here for it, Skaz. Let me know when that segment runs. We will rerun that in Felker and Mass.
Yes.
That sounds amazing.
So yes, Kimberly Ford Chisholm, a published author, and we were doing some digging the other night. Her great grandfather carved Mount Rushmore. So just some things we've learned about the new Celtics first family.
That's a great detail.
Yes,
that's a great historical detail. Can I give you a selfish, self-serving family detail of mine that has not translated to my life?
Please.
So my family history goes to Sir Arthur Conan Doyle.
Ah.
And if you're not familiar with who that is the writer of the Sherlock Holmes mysteries.
I love that. I love those.
I did not get that writing skill set. That got lost with me.
No mystery novels for you, Stu.
No, not at all. Not at all. I have the Sherlock book right there on my bookshelf. Um, you want to talk about the roster construction, or do you want to save that for another episode?
Yeah, I mean, I'm up. I'm up for whatever, Jay Stu. You want to talk roster construction? You want to talk Jaylen Brown injury? I'm here for whatever.
So let's start with the Jaylen Brown injury. Should I be worried about it, Skaz? I think I've been worried about this team's health. They're riding along like the '09 Celtics who were trying to repeat. Like they're good. They're on a roll, and now health is just because there's a lot of mileage on everything. Um, and I think we're just kind of finding out now with the odds shifting to OKC now being the favorite to win the title for the first time since 2023, which I didn't know. Um, Health is now becoming an issue for this team. And if Jaylen Brown, they're announcing he's out early on, that's kind of a red flag. We don't, Holiday's been in and out of the lineup. Horford's had some great moments, but he's aging. Derek White's been hot and cold. So I think there's a health issue there. Tatum with his mileage. Like, should I be concerned that they're not going to repeat because of health and not because of talent?
Yeah, I mean, I'm absolutely a little concerned. The Jalen thing, I'm almost happy that they've just said he's out for the next couple games. There's no more questionable. There's no more. We'll wait and see. Shut him down. I think that's what they should be doing with anybody that's questionable right now. Just rest him. Jalen especially. He's a guy that, I mean, really since the OKC game just wasn't right. He got beat bad by Shea in that game, and I think he's just not right. And hopefully, sitting down, because I'm of the belief that this team is not the same as last year. And when I say that, I mean really the NBA is not the same as last year. They are not winning a championship if they're hobbled, if Porzingis is only available for 7 playoff games, if Jaylen Brown is out for any period of time. I think the NBA is much better as a whole. The Eastern Conference this year with Cleveland, with the Knicks. I'm not really sold on the Bucks or anybody like that, but Cleveland and the Knicks, sure, are good teams. And then out west, you're certainly not getting a one-dimensional Mavericks team coming out of the West. So yes, I know health is lazy, easy. I did hear, if they lose Tatum, they're not going to win. Yes, obviously, we know that, but health is number one for me. And then when you mentioned roster construction, just one thing on new ownership, I in roster construction hand in hand, I think someone in our chat said this on Thursday or Friday, but the canary in the coal mine here, the one guy to watch more than anybody else, I think, is Brad Stevens. If Brad Stevens leaves or Brad Stevens is gone or anything like that, that's a red flag to new ownership to me. That is the biggest red flag. That would be, sound the alarm. Jaylen Brown is gone if that's the case. I think if Brad Stevens is here and Joe Mazzulla is here, I feel good about the future of the Celtics. If Brad Stevens sees something he doesn't like with new ownership and he's gone, that raises all the skeptics for me, all the red flags.
Okay, so this is the detail that everybody seems to miss with Brad Stevens. He is the team president of the Boston Celtics. Bigger than that, how many teams are there in the NBA, Skaz? 30,
Right,
30?
right
There's
now
30,
or in a
30
couple of
teams.
years. Yeah.
30 teams right now, right? 30 teams in the NBA?
Yep.
So he has the team president job, one of 30 in the NBA. And he's going to go back to college.
I don't think he's going back to college.
Do you think to cross sports, which I love crossing sports, to go to Bill Belichick, and would he rather be the de facto leader of the North Carolina program, or would he want an NFL job?
I think Brad Stevens, like the way he's shooting up, he could be like part of a next ownership group, one of these expansion teams or something like that. Like if you're an
But does
expansion
he
team,
want that, Skaz?
I have no idea what Brad Stevens wants.
Nobody does. But
Yeah,
it's the basic core of. So this is, I don't know if I saw this online or if I remember it, but there's a detail about Brad Stevens. Brad Stevens was originally hired, and the timeline will not match up on this. But my understanding, and maybe it's something I read, maybe it's something I heard, I don't recall. I'm sorry. I'd love to give credit to the person who said this. And if you're out there listening, drop me a tweet or an X or post, whatever the bleep they call it now. Brad Stevens was hired under the premise that he was going to get Garnett and Pierce. And then they pivoted to the rebuild. And Brad Stevens still came to the Boston Celtics. He still took the NBA job. Now, did it cost the Celtics more money and more years? It probably did. But Doc was leaving and Brad was coming in. And I hope it's out there because it's not just me like misremembering something. Like, it's actually out there. But my understanding is Brad was coming here for Garnett and Pierce, and then they traded Garnett and Pierce. Yeah, and somebody in chat is like, I don't think that's true. I either heard it or I saw it somewhere. But it's an NBA job, Skaz. If an NBA team came to you and wanted you to be coach, team president, assistant coach, capologist, whatever, you're taking that job. And
Absolutely.
the only way you're getting rid of that job is the ownership group is terrible. The ownership group is terrible. The people around you are terrible. You can't do what you want to do. Brad has been able to do what he wants to do. And it's a team president job for an NBA franchise. I don't think unless Brad really wants to go back to college, that he's going back to college. But it's going to keep coming up because Brad's an Indiana guy and he's not a big market thing. Like,
Yeah, and you say right there though that Brad can do what he wants to do. That's true right now. If that changes under new ownership and he's not allowed to do what Brad wants to, then I wonder if you're one of these new expansion teams in Vegas or Seattle, wherever it happens to be. And I don't think Brad Stevens is leaving. I'm just saying he's the guy I would be paying attention to. He is the red flag for me. If he's gone, something has gone very, very amiss. But if you're starting an NBA franchise and now you know the price tag is $7 billion to start one of these teams in these new cities, is there anyone in the world you would rather have run your basketball operations than Brad Stevens?
no, Brad's the guy. He's number one.
So if you're a new ownership group and you say, look what's going on with the Celtics. They're tearing that thing down. Brad Stevens might not be happy. Let's give him a new toy. We're a new ownership group. It's LeBron James in Las Vegas. It's Maverick Carter. It's FSG. It's Fenway Sports Group. Imagine them stealing Brad Stevens from you. Why would Brad want to leave an iconic historic franchise? Why does anyone do anything? Money. It's always money. If new ownership comes in and handcuffs Brad, he's going to want to leave. That's how it happens. It's all about money. New ownership could change anything. How many times do people's positions change when a new boss comes in? That's just how the world works. You can look at the Celtics and say, I love the Celtics. The Celtics are the greatest thing in the world. It's a job. It's his job. I think Brad Stevens is here for a long time. My only point is, if he's gone, that is a massive, massive red flag to me because new ownership should be doing everything they can to keep Brad Stevens.
Here's the detail, and we'll close with this, and maybe we'll do some of the roster stuff next week. Or actually 2 weeks, because I won't be here next week. These business people, it feels like they invest in the executive. They invest in the analytics. They invest in the manager of the department more so in the department than they do the rosters. Now that sounds weird when I say it that way, but so let's go to the Patriots. They paid Belichick $25 million per year, and then they divvied up, and then Bill divvied up what the salaries were for the staffers. I think Brad makes 10 a year being the team president of the Celtics. I think Austin Ainge makes like 4 or 5 a year to be the capologist guy. So it's a matter of how they divvy that up the rest of the way. But if they want to keep Brad Stevens, who this new owner is on the record being like, oh, I love Brad, and I love Joe, and I love Chris Forsberg, and maybe they buy Chris Forsberg from NBC Sports Boston to be their analytics guy, right? I do think that Brad Stevens, if he wants to be here, they'll pay him to stay here. And they'll pay Austin Ainge to stay here. They'll pay Mike Zarin to stay here. I think Mike Zarin at this point makes about $5-6 million a year. So there's your upper management making 20 a year. I think. But if Brad wants to be here, they'll pay him to stay here.
That Mike Zarin point's a good one too. He might be a guy to watch, right? Like what?
Yeah.
Like what is?
He almost took the job in Philadelphia, I think, and then this, ownership group is like, nope, we can't lose Zarin.
I mean, yeah, I think he's another guy that's pivotally important.
Yeah, I would agree with that. The whole staffing is important, right? From there, and that's another thing with this new ownership guy is that he's heavily into analytics, which is where sports are trending. The Celtics are so deep in analytics where they will track pregame warmups. They will track everything, and they have the technology to do it. You see the shooting lines, and they have the little, I don't know how they do it exactly, but they will track everybody in their shooting lines, their layup lines, and tracking everybody's warm-ups, and whether it's a chip in the shoe or a chip in the basketball or whatever it is, like they have all those numbers of, say Tatum goes, 1 for 40 in warm-ups. They know that. And it's so silly, but they track everything.
Yeah.
They track every single detail, which is good and bad.
Yeah.
You can have too much information. I think it's too much information. It's again, across sports, and this will wrap us up because people are complaining that they want to see Kendra. I don't blame them. Like I'd rather see McCarthy and Kendra on the stream, even though you can do 2 streams at once. That in baseball, Ortiz was in a slump during the Francona years, and Ortiz is like trying to figure out what to do, and Francona's in the cage is like, dude, you hit 50 home runs last year. You'll figure it out.
I like that. I like
the
that.
talent. Like Tito's like, oh, I was a 200 hitter. Like you're a 50 home run guy. You'll figure it out.
I'm with you still.
They'll figure it
you.
out. We'll do roster construction in the future. Because I can go through fake trades and what it means and everything like that. But people want Kendra, and I get it. I personally, I want McCarthy, but that's the baseball person.
The baseball boys.
The baseball boys. That should be a name of a podcast. Skaz, thanks for waking up early and spending
of course
about an hour.
No, great.
Celtics. You'll be back next week. I will not. We'll kind of go from there.
All right.
Any closing thoughts, guys, or no?
No, the rest of the Celtics schedule kind of stinks. So, we'll do some roster construction soon.
We'll do roster constructions. All right, everybody, happy green teaming this week. And maybe there's more news on the Celtics ownership group this week. And, we'll be back to chat about that at some point, and then the roster. Enjoy Kendra and McCarthy, okay? Everybody have a good day.